up if I need to. So first off, I'll start off. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, who has more victories than struggles today over drugs, alcohol, self-esteem, self-worth. Still struggle today with anger, lust, relationships, codependency, tobacco. I mean, again, the list goes on. And my name is Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Guys, well, let's get started. I was born September 5th, 1970, to Claudia and Stephen Bettley here in Fort Worth, Texas. It's right down here at Harris Hospital. But my first memories, I don't remember my father being around though. So I was raised by my single mother in Irving, Texas. And as I remember, I was never struggling for anything. We always had food on the table, roof over our head. To me, it was great. You know, I had my mother there. At the age of 6, I was introduced to a family friend. He was a friend of one of my mother's friends. And we would spend every weekend or every other weekend. He was more like a big brother. That way Mom could go out, try and find me a new daddy. And he had a boat and an RV, so we'd go out on the weekends and we'd go camping, fishing, sightseeing across the state. But as the time went by, the time I spent with him got weirder.
What?
I was too young to know any better, but he began to sexually molest me.
Oh.
It started with showering together to save water, and it progressed from there. Of course, I never said anything to my mother because of the fear and shame. I didn't say anything because I wasn't for sure that wasn't fatherly love. That was the only male love I had in my life. And of course, if I told anybody then, I wouldn't get to enjoy the time, or they just wouldn't believe me. And I have to say that 95% of the time that I spent with this gentleman was fine. We did some really cool things, but 5% was horrible. This went on for about 6 years, where the visits began to involve emotional abuse and physical abuse as I got older. He threatened that if I did say anything, my family would think that I was lying and I'd get into even bigger trouble. The whole time I remained silent because of my shame and guilt. My mother remarried when I was 13 years of age. The man she married was a good role model for me. And he ended that relationship that I had with this abuser. He didn't know about the abuse, but he knew something just wasn't right about the time he spent. As I continued to mature, I kept this secret. I felt more confused and shameful every day. See, I knew he was continuing to do this to other young boys, and that caused me great shame and guilt. Now, throughout high school, I did not have a girlfriend because of my confusion of my sexuality. I constantly questioned myself. I was attracted to women, but I was still so confused. I was fortunate that in school it was quite easy for me. I took a lot of the advanced classes, and I graduated Sigma Cum Laude and had all these great plans for my future. During my junior and senior year, I trained with my stepfather. He raced motorcycles, so he always did a lot of training. And I got into doing triathlons, where you run, bike, and swim. I was a varsity member of the swim team, and this kept me in good shape. I did this mainly, I was interested in joining the Marine Corps upon graduation. That was where I was going to go. Join the Marine Corps, do my service, get some schooling in. And doing all this physical work, it helped me prepare. But on my senior year, a week after prom, I had a horrible bicycle accident out by Joe Pool Lake. I hit a pothole at about 45 miles an hour, and I wasn't wearing a helmet. But luckily, my stepfather was with me. He said that I tumbled down the road for about 200 foot before coming to the rest in the middle of the road. And luckily, a motorist came back quickly afterward and went for help. There was a volunteer fire department at the top of the hill. See, at that time there were no cell phones back in '89, or if there were, they were really way overpriced, kind of like today. So the volunteer fire department came down. I was eventually care flighted to the hospital. I had crushed the left side of my face and many abrasions all over my body. I ended up with 4 metal plates, 16 screws, and a piece of my rib bone just to recreate this right here, the other side. But what hurt the most was the hardest thing though was finding out that I'd lost consciousness during that flight. And this meant I was disqualified for service for at least 2 years. That hurt the most. I was able to graduate with my class a few weeks after returning to school, but I was lost at this point. All my plans for the future were messed up. I wanted to go in the Marine Corps. I didn't have any money to go pay for college, even community college. We just didn't have that savings. But also by this time, I had already started working as a bartender, and that started the use of alcohol in my life. By age 19, I was working at the Four Seasons Resort in Las Colinas, and I was working with a lot of older coworkers. So after work, we would go up to the bar down the street, the Bennigan's, and because I was a bartender at the Four Seasons, they served me without question my age. But soon after, it was soon after that I was introduced to cocaine by the coworkers. And within a year, I had to go to my first rehab. The day I turned myself into rehab, my mother took me there. And she had an MRI scheduled that afternoon. She'd been having some really bad headaches and had had an MRI. That evening, I found out that my mother had inoperable brain tumors. And I was locked up for the next 30 days. Needless to say, I did not take my rehab very seriously. I was more worried about my mother. First time I saw her after 2 weeks, she came there and she had her head shaved and a big scar where they tried to do some work. It was all for naught. 6 months later, my mother lost her battle with cancer. I buried her on Christmas Eve of 1991.
Wow.
In 30 years now. I then picked up my bad habits again. 6 months later, I was back using on a regular basis. I stopped talking to my family and had isolated myself. The only people I were around were the people I was using with. I got my first DWI, mind you, first, at age 28. That didn't slow me down one bit. It was just a misdemeanor. By that time, I'd started living in hotels and on people's couches. My addiction was so strong that sometimes I chose the drug. I say most times I chose the drug or alcohol over a place to sleep. I've slept on the streets. I've slept behind. I've just slept everywhere. My addiction was that powerful. I chose the drug. Yeah, okay. In the year 2000, I moved to Collin County to get away from the drugs. Soon to find out the drugs were everywhere if you looked. I continued working in the restaurant business for a bit longer until I met a regular at the bar that offered me a job doing some trim carpentry work. And I enjoyed this work because, it was very satisfying to have something made at the end of the day that lasted longer than just getting somebody drunk with the money in my pocket. But I was still using and drinking. I dated that gentleman's daughter for the next 7 years. Of course, I thought it was true love, but it was so shaky, it was just toxic. My boss, her father, died tragically one evening in a motorcycle accident. He'd fallen asleep while riding his motorcycle.
Wow.
He'd been up for days on methamphetamine and ice. Suddenly, my life changed again. I'd been living at his place. All of a sudden, I had to move out. The family got all of his and some of my work tools because they thought it was his, and I had no proof it was mine. Plus, at that time, he owed me over $1,200. I got none of that, but instead thrown out to find a new place to live. And I was broke. I ended up moving in with another friend of mine. Started my own business, and unfortunately, that friend was also using methamphetamines. That lasted for about a year before I had to dissolve the business and try something new. I got my second DWI at age 34, and my third at age 38. I continued laying my head on people's couches or rooms and even stayed in the homeless shelter multiple times. My third DWI, I received 5 years probation. I stopped drinking for that time with the help of having a breathalyzer at home. But I'd begun using the K2 because they couldn't test for it at that time. And my addiction to that quickly became what it was all about. My addiction caused me to eventually start stealing money from a job. I had access to the cash drawer all the time because of the daily register. They pull in cash, worked at a golf course. They bring in cash every day. I'd tell them what the price was, put the money in the thing, and never ring it up. So, at the close of the night, I take the cash, I do the money anyway. And whatever was over, what the thing said I needed to give them, that's what I gave them, and anything that was over went in my pocket. And that would usually take care of me buying my K2 almost every day. This went on for about a year before I was fired for moving some money around in one of our accounts. I was found out when someone checked their account and it was wrong and it was traced back to me. Now I did pay it back the following day. I always really kind of had the money, but it was already too late. I lied to my bosses and family, telling them I was clean and sober when I wasn't. Also on my third DWI, I actually at that time reached out to my biological father, who lived in the area finally, and started to get to know him and my brothers and sisters. I had nieces and nephews, and I was telling them, I'm clean, I'm sober, the whole time smoking K2. I'd most of the time go visit them and not use that morning, but as soon as I left their house, I was in the car, down the street, hitting the pipe again. But upon completing probation, I picked up right where I left off. I began drinking again and then smoking marijuana because now I was off probation. I didn't have to worry about getting caught. And I was able to function for a few years. Still no permanent address. I was renting rooms from people that I was partying with. But on June 22nd, 2015, I was pulled over after a night at the bar and received my fourth DWI, my second felony. After a year and a half in the court, I was blessed to sign for 10 years probation. And they came at me for 25 years in prison at first and didn't get off of it for a year and a half and a couple hours. They didn't come off for about an hour before we went to court. But upon signing, they told me of all the conditions of probation. I had to have a home breathalyzer, an ankle monitor that detected alcohol, and of course the wide range of classes to attend. And I had to pay for all these things, coming to about $500 a month. And after a few months with my job slowing down to where I could not pay these fees and live, I just decided I was going to revoke myself and just do the time. Because upon getting that fourth DWI, my family kind of shut me off again. They realized I'd been lying to them once again, and they just couldn't deal with it anymore. So I decided I was going to revoke myself. Started using meth again. I still wasn't drinking because I still had that breathalyzer at home. And I didn't want to get busted that quick because they'd know that evening if I was using. But finally, after 2 dirty UAs, my officer asked me why I was still using. I told him I was defeated and I just wanted to give up. I had no family support because I'd burnt those bridges by lying to them, and I was alone. The officer offered me SAFE-P, Substance Abuse Treatment Program, through the TDCJ instead of revocation. I decided, why not? You know, it gave me a place to stay with no bills, gave me meals, a place to stay for about 6 months. I said, well, I'll give it a try. About 3 months into the program, I was looking closely at who it had become, and it disgusted me. After about 3 months, it takes about that long before you really get sober, sometimes longer. And I had, of course, you can get it in prison, unfortunately, but I decided I didn't want that. So. But it disgusted me, and I decided I needed to change. And I looked at what I'd never truly tried before. Now, growing up, my grandparents took me to church, and we went regularly with my grandparents, but with my mom, we really didn't go to church that much. And of course, with my mom dying, then having the accident and losing my goals there, and my mom dying, I was blaming God. I was running from him. I didn't believe in his promises. I was just that guy that he didn't love. So I looked at what I hadn't tried before, and that was Christ in my life. I knew of Jesus, but it was unbelief. But it was in unbelief because of all the heartache I'd experienced. So the abuse, the dream's death, my mother's death, I ran from him. So I started attending church every Sunday there in prison, and I felt that burning in my heart every time I attended. The goosebumps of God, what they should call them. I accepted Jesus Christ into my life and was baptized on September 11, 2017.
Hallelujah.
From that day, my life started to change.
Amen.
Slowly but surely,
Hallelujah.
I was feeling better about myself. And on January 6th of 2018, I was released and sent to the Abode halfway house in White Settlement. Yeah, you know, I had no clue where that was at that time, but later realized that was exactly where God wanted me to be. Just before release from the Abode, I'd gotten a job there with a godly gentleman, a boss. He was also a felon. He was godly, sober, married, and becoming successful. And that's what I wanted. I began attending church with him and his wife. When I first got out of that, I was staying at a hotel off of Las Vegas Trail.
Boy.
Wasn't good, but he came and picked me up for work, brought me home, came pick me up to church, and actually started taking me to CR with him. At that time, they were both part of the leadership at Grace Baptist Church. I got started in my first step study soon after and finally started truly doing those steps. Through the steps, I was able to identify the true root problems in my life. The problems that I was covering up with the alcohol and drugs. Those were a problem, but those weren't why I was using. I had to figure out why. I didn't want to feel that shame and guilt and resentments from my past. You know, but with my group and the step study and my sponsor, I was able to bring those things to the light and began freeing those pains. And it was tough, but I did it. It was God who gave me that strength and courage. Suddenly I felt lighter, happier, and no longer defeated. I had God's grace, mercy, and forgiveness.
Amen.
I was able to forgive myself and those that had hurt me. And I was becoming the man God had prepared me to be.
Amen.
I'll go through some of the steps and how I saw them to relate to my life. So, step one, we admitted we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors, that our lives had become unmanageable. Duh. I mean, I was living on couches, renting rooms, living on the street. I'd stolen from businesses quite regularly to pay for my drugs. I still used my paychecks for drugs and didn't pay rent. Drugs and alcohol were all that I were worried about. I even risked my freedom to stay high. So my life was quite unmanageable. Step two, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Like a friend of mine said, I wasn't sure that I could be sane and that it was even possible. But with accepting Christ in my heart and life, I began to see his power and realized that with Christ, all things are possible.
Amen.
Amen.
Step three, we had made a decision to turn our life and our wills over to the care of God. And that was pretty easy for me. I understood that I could not correctly live my life on my own. I needed help. God could and would help me. So I still daily turn my life over to him and ask for his guidance. Step four, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Well, I have to admit that was a little scary, but it's also very enlightening. See, that made me relive all those things that I had done and that were done to me. I had been disrespectful to myself and others for so many years, lying, manipulating, and isolating myself from family and friends. See, I had no self-confidence or self-esteem. I felt that I did not deserve anything good in my life. It started to get good, I'd destroy it. Life, health, relationships, you name it, I destroyed it. Because I was used to being in pain. If it got too good, I wasn't used to that, and I didn't like change. So. Step five, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. This was a bit scary also. See, I could admit to myself and God, we knew what I'd done. But to admit to another human being, that was hard. I had to air my dirty laundry to someone else and let them know all my faults. I had to take that mask off. Upon doing that, it felt so free. I could now be free from all that shame and guilt and resentment that I'd held on for way too long. So in step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And in step 7, we humbly asked him to remove these shortcomings. Boy, was I ready, or at least willing. Upon having God remove these character defects, I quickly became a new man. I had my confidence and self-esteem back. I could get in front of people with little to no anxiety. I knew I could do it. God had given me that strength and courage to face any obstacle without fear. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And step 9, we made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Now this took a little time to complete because I was still a lot afraid of what they might say. Then I realized this step was for me to ask for forgiveness. How they accepted my apology was not on me. I had to honestly and truly ask for forgiveness, and the rest was on them. I expected nothing in return, but to my relief, most of them forgave me. I now have a relationship with my entire family. It's not where it should be, but it's getting better day by day.
Amen.
I burnt those bridges for so many years, I needed to give it time for them to trust me again. If I'd burned up over 30 years, I couldn't expect back in 1 year. But each year, even this year, was getting better. They actually, after the Christmas dinner, had me pray over the family meal.
Hallelujah.
I keep doing what I should be doing, and it's continued to grow my trust with them. So step 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This is a daily look at my life, and if I had wronged or hurt someone, I would quickly ask for forgiveness. I still make mistakes, but I'm getting better each day. I'm still far from perfect, but that's okay. See, progress, not perfection, is what I seek. Step 11 and step 12, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And step 12, having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all of our affairs. I do have time each morning and evening set aside for prayer. I'm still working on my meditation time, but I only listen to Christian music on my radio now. I've switched off all those country western and hard rock stations. I didn't realize how toxic they were.
Boy.
As far as meditating, I've been blessed in that I'm able to carry this message to others on a regular basis. I try to get out and share my testimony whenever I can. On February 6, 2019, I was able to start bringing Celebrate Recovery to the men of the abode.
Oh, that's good.
Go back in there, and I was able to share with them until COVID interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
The group grew from 2 to 3 men a week to over 30 each week.
Wow.
I gave out over 350 surrender chips, 150 Bibles at that point.
Blessing.
I've been blessed by those men that I've met there, and they helped me as much as I helped them. Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron, as one man sharpens another. I look forward to going back there when all this stuff dies down and continue doing what God has led me to do. I've established a relationship again with my biological father and brothers and sisters, but most importantly, my nieces and nephews. My relationship, again, is not as strong as I wish it would, but it's growing every day. I damaged it for so many years, I can't expect overnight. I'm currently blessed to be a ministry leader at a Celebrate Recovery at Lake Country Church, my home church. We began that in Super Bowl Sunday of 2020. Then COVID came. And we struggled for a while, and we lost a couple people to COVID ourselves. We're growing weekly, and we just finished up our first step study of 6 people. So we're looking at growing our leadership and doing some leadership work with them. I look forward to seeing this ministry grow and flourish to reach all of those that want recovery in their life. You know, there was 8 of us blessed to attend the summit this last year, mainly because it was in the area. I can't afford to go to California. There at the summit, I joined Broken Chains. Familiar, that's a group inside of Celebrate Recovery for motorcyclists and bike enthusiasts, all celebrating the healing power of Jesus Christ in the ministry of Celebrate Recovery.
Amen.
I look forward to becoming more involved in them and doing the different rides they do. But I'm just so glad all of you all are here today in that search of a better you.
Amen.
So God bless you all and thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate you. And Chris has left some of his business cards and some pamphlets and stuff, if anybody'd like to. He is, their church is the other place that has a daytime meeting. We have it on Thursdays during the day. They have it on Sundays during the day. So if you can make it over that way.
Where's it located at?
Bailey, Boswell, and Lug Club Road. So it's over by Eagle Mountain Lake.
Wow.
Yeah, it's.
I know where you at.
Know where that is.
I know where it is. I know
So
where
if you're able to, and then,
Yeah.
you know, well, I'll try and get together some kind of bus or something to come pick
That's
you
what
guys
kind
up
of cover
eventually.
ministries is at.
But it's also, I've got my business cards there, it's got my number.
Yes, sir.
If you're interested in coming, give me a call.
Yes, sir.
We'll try and find a way.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate it.
Chris.
If everybody